It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of a bank in formation. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to Your Personal Bank Show, and I'll tell you what, can 2020 get any crazier? We just found out the president and first lady got tested positive with COVID, about a month before the election. How is that going to affect things? I mean, I don't think anybody really knows. And irregardless of where you fall in the political spectrum and all that. And, why is this important for your money? Well, I don't think anybody would disagree that depending on who we have as president next year and which party is in charge, probably is going to have some impacts, certainly with regulations, certainly with tax policy, economic policy, a lot of things that do affect our money. So I think this is an election that, like I've stated before, some previous shows, that our money could be significantly impacted one way or the other, depending on, again, which party is in control. Having the president running a campaign a month before election and, having to basically shut down or quarantine for a couple of weeks, it's going to be hard to say. Who knows what the impact's going to be? I've seen a lot of pundits, heard a lot of folks already talking about the positives and the negatives of it. I think it just could go either way. I just don't know. People could start feeling some sympathy or empathy for that kind of thing, of course. The other side of it, it could just blow them out. You know what I'm saying? It's hard. It's just impossible to know. And I think that's the story of 2020. I think is when this year is finally in the books and we look back on it, in history, it'll be interesting to think about what are the things that happened and what are the things we're going to remember from it. There's a lot of things that happened this year, but I think a lot of it is a lot of things that, really were unexpected and who would have thunk kind of stuff. I mean, first of all, COVID, obviously. And I remember early in March, actually I had recorded a show to play early March, and, compliance officers had some issues with it because I was talking about, hey, coronavirus could be something pretty significant, and you want to be concerned because there could impact your money in a big way. And I wasn't being overly negative. I was just saying, look, looks like this is something that you should be aware of and should be concerned about. And like I said, this was supposed to air first week of March. And the compliance officers, like I said, had a big problem with it and ultimately had to scrap the show entirely. It's the first and only time I've had to scrap an entire show due to compliance. And it wasn't because of any product issues or anything like that. I wasn't even talking about any product on that show. Really, again, all I was saying is, look, coronavirus is something to be concerned about. Now, we don't know enough about it at that time. I think a lot of people, in my opinion, it's gotten so political, it's hard to discuss rationally, but I'm just going to say my opinion. I think a lot of people underestimated the severity of it or the impact early on at a time where we knew much less about it. And to me, when you know less about something, that's the time to be concerned and take precautions. And then finishing my thought process later on, then I think because then they overreacted. And I think a lot of the shutdowns, although some of it was necessary, I think a lot of it went too far and for far too long. And it was an overreaction to a previous underreaction, if you know what I'm saying. And forget the politics. I'm trying to get away from, and that's the other part of it. I've never really understood why a virus, I sort of kind of understand, but the fact it got so political, to me, kind of defies logic. It's a virus. It's a bug. It's like any other virus or flu or bug or anything else out there. It doesn't care what your political beliefs are. If you get contact with it, and you either get it or you don't. And then those that need to protect themselves should, high risk folks. But that would be true for any virus. So why this one? That's the part that I find rather mind-boggling or defies logic. How's that? We'll put it that way. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic here. What I really want to focus on here is this crazy, unpredictable year because, we've had think about it. We've had a toilet paper shortage. There was a period of time where you couldn't find toilet paper in any store you went into. we saw a 30% market crash in like 30 days, and then it corrected like a couple months later. Almost nobody saw the crash or the severity of it, and almost nobody predicted the recovery so fast, okay? It was totally unexpected. And as I was starting to say, the show that I got canned and I had to re-record a show for that time slot, interestingly, about 2 weeks later, because again, on that show, all I was saying is, hey, be concerned, might want to, keep an eye on things, might want to look at moving some things to more safety, that kind of stuff. That's all I was saying. And they compliance folks were like, the market's only been down for a week. It had gone down 5 days in a row. And, it's been going up for years. And you're fear-mongering, so it's too much. That was the word. It wasn't really fear-mongering. It's just too much. It's too much. And I disagreed. I said, no, I think people should be aware. People should be concerned and be cognizant of this. To keep your eyes and ears open, if you know what I'm saying. Literally 2 weeks later, I aired a show that was much more severe in terms of what concerns, money concerns and such. And it sailed through compliance without an issue because literally 2 weeks later, everything that I had originally said, that's what frustrated me about it, not only came true, but even then some. And so my point is, this is a year where you just can't almost can't discount anything because, like I said, who would have thunk? In my lifetime, I never thought I'd walk into a grocery store and see nearly empty shelves where you couldn't buy a canned good or toilet paper for quite some time. I just never thought I would see it. I think part of the reason that impacted me so much, this is kind of a little bit of a personal story. Those of you who don't know, my name is Ferenc Toth. I'm the oldest son. My dad's same as my dad's name. I'm actually half Hungarian. My dad actually escaped when he was a young adult from Budapest in 1956 from the Soviets. That was the first Soviet crackdown behind the wall that later went up, of course. But he never liked talking. He never liked talking about it much, and he's passed away a number of years ago now, unfortunately. So I couldn't ask him all the questions. It was not a part of his life, let's put it this way, that he wanted to remember too much, so he didn't talk about it much. But the information I got from him and some other family members that were involved, we believe he was one of the early protesters. The protest started in colleges and quickly grew into a huge protest in Budapest, and then it went on for a couple months or so. Everything that I've known and seen and read and been told by folks personally there. And then, of course, the Soviets cracked down. They brought the tanks in. He literally ran west, escaped, got across the border. They shut the borders down the next day, ended up in a refugee camp, political refugee camp, and then ended up in the U.S., where he met my mom, went to college, got married, and I was born here. But with my dad and some other folks like that, the point I'm trying to get at is, there are the stories about, shortages in the grocery stores and, not being able to buy bread and things like that at times. And, America's a land of opportunity and all those things that we frankly never thought we would see. And gosh, in 2020 we did. So it really made an impact on me when I saw that. Of course, then we saw government shutdowns and we saw government, bailouts and everything else. But I guess the big point I'm trying to make here is what's next. And I don't think anyone really knows, and I don't think anyone can predict. And that's why having some security, some stability in your money is probably very important, at least for a portion of it. And that's what we're going to talk about today in the next segment, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth.
All right, welcome back. I'll tell you what, my producer surprised me in that last segment. I was in the middle of a story, and all of a sudden the music started. I'm like, holy cow. Anyway, what I've been talking about today, of course, is, what a crazy year we're having. And what's next? I mean, with COVID and, now the president, first lady has it. How's that going to impact the election? We've had the crazy things happen. What's going to happen going forward? How's that going to affect our money, the economy, all those kinds of things? And there's an awful lot of uncertainty, and the markets have been moving a lot recently, and, because they abhor uncertainty. And I think most everybody knows that. And we've seen giant moves this year in short periods of time. We saw a 30% move in March, in 30 days, basically, with the S&P, for example. We've seen toilet paper shortages. We've had government shutdowns, some of them still happening. We've seen stimulus packages, trillions of dollars going, billions and billions, even $1 trillion or more, stimulus going out. That's impacted businesses, some positively, others negatively. I've seen things where, Yelp has shown that something like a third of small business listings have already been reported as closed permanently. How's that going to impact the economy? And I read an article today, in fact, I was talking about how a lot of the government stimulus has affected more the medium and larger, or benefited the medium and larger businesses, but not so much the small businesses. Even the Treasury Secretary, and this stated just recently, like this past week, he said there's not much call for loans under $1 million. Well, I would beg to differ. I know a lot of small business owners. A lot of them are clients of mine. I'm one myself. And there's a lot of businesses out there, small businesses that have, 5 employees or 10 or 20 or less even, who have been struggling to operate through this year. And the more concerns, I can tell you from a personal standpoint, they're really more concerned about, if we take the money from government, what are the strings? What are the payback requirements? How's it going to impact me? Am I going to be able to pay it back? Those kinds of things. So the loans can be of some benefit, but not so much for smaller businesses because, well, there's a fact is, are they even going to be in business? And a lot of small business owners are really, really facing that situation, that decision. And, let's face it. I mean, something like half of the employment in the country is with small business. I mean, so it's a significant economic impact. How is that going to affect things going forward? Fed policy. That's another one that, it seems like every crisis we go into, the Fed and the governments get more and more involved and do more. And there's no question this last cycle has been unprecedented. Fed recently stated they're going to keep the low interest rate environment through, I've heard latest now, 2023. Keeping this extremely low interest rate environment around, and it's been around basically since 08, 09. And I think most people agree they kept it down for far too long, should have let it go up some. But there's definitely an impact. And what that does is it helps predict winners and losers. It helps predict those who benefit and those who don't. It also creates uncertainty in terms of not allowing the normal cycles of what logic would dictate, you would think would happen. It messes with all that. So it creates an additional level of uncertainty. What direction are they going to do? What are they going to do? And by the way, in the first segment, I talked about the one show that the compliance had me scrap because they felt like my message was too dire about the potential problems of coronavirus in early March, which within 2 weeks, it was old news. A lot of the information I was getting was from the Federal Reserve. I've mentioned I'm on a bank board. I'm the chairman of the board of a bank in formation, and we get information through the banking industry. It's a known fact now that the Federal Reserve, was concerned about coronavirus back in mid-February. Okay? Chairman Powell was talking about it publicly already back then. But I was getting some information from them. But, of course, a lot of people weren't paying attention. Things were good. Unemployment was down. The economy was strong. The markets were strong. I mean, everything was looking great. So, we're a creature of habit, right? And when things change on us and it's like a shift, like a sea change, it's like it's uncomfortable for the human nature when when an earthquake happens and the ground below you that you were used to being stable all of a sudden just starts moving in unexpected ways. And maybe that's a good analogy of really what 2020 has kind of done for all of us. A lot of stuff has happened that, frankly, my wife said to me the other day, stop saying that could never happen because we've already seen a lot of things that you thought you have stated before could never happen, did happen. She's right. So I'm gotten to the point where I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anyone can predict what's going to happen. And not only what the impact's going to be both now for the shorter term, but also down the road and over the next several years. How is this all going to impact things? Now, what's it have to do with your money? Everything. Your investments, your portfolio, what your retirement, things you're putting away for the future, both short and long term. The unexpectancy, the uncertainty of what is going to happen impacts all of those things. And so what I've said for often, and this isn't just this year, by the way, I've been saying this for 22 years now. Having a portion of your money in a secure, stable, consistent bucket of money just makes sense. It makes sense on so many levels. 2020 has just illustrated that tremendously. It's brought it to the forefront for a lot of people, and that's why I'm probably busier than ever. I have people reaching out to me more than they ever have, frankly, because they're recognizing that same thing. The thing is, whether good times or bad, it doesn't really matter, or everything in between. Having some funds in a secure, stable, consistent, steady bucket of money so it grows consistently, it's not affected by things like economic and market risks and those types of things, where it just continues and it grows on a steady eddy basis. You have access to those funds. Oh, by the way, you can get tax benefits. You can create a tax-free income so you can reduce your future tax liability, or what I should say is, more importantly, your future tax uncertainty. You know, not only all these things with the economy and all these things going on with elections and the government and COVID and everything else that's out there, but can you tell me what tax policy is going to be a year from now, or 5 or 10 or 20? See, that's another impossibility. One of my favorite books, the point of the book is The Power of Zero, is the name of the book, by David Barton. And the point of the book is, if tax rates increase in the future, well, 2 times 0 is still 0, right? So I had a client read that the last couple of weeks, talk to him. We discussed the personal bank. He'd been listening to the radio show. He said it made some sense, having some monies in a safer, secure, consistent, steady tax benefit arena. Just made a lot of sense because, frankly, he didn't, like so many people I run into. And after reading the book, he shot me an email and said, it's very clear I need to make some changes after reading that book, because I just never really considered future tax liability and the tax risk that I'm taking with my portfolio. In other words, basically, most of his monies were subject to future tax, and there's no way to predict what that policy is going to be, right? And let's face it, the government is in deficit. They owe money. I don't think anybody argues with that, and they spent about, so far this year, twice as much as they've brought in. So the deficit, the debt has grown significantly this year, and it could potentially grow quite a bit more depending on what they do with additional stimulus and COVID and all that stuff, right? So does the government owe money? Yeah. Are they going to have to pay it back at some point, or rectify that to a degree? Eventually, yes. How? Well, raising taxes is one option, isn't it? And if they do increase the rates or increase the brackets or make changes to that, that increases the uncertainty on how much money you have to live on or spend in retirement or down the road, right? So eliminating some tax risk or tax uncertainty is probably equally as important as reducing economic or return uncertainty. Stay tuned. We'll talk some more about this in the next segment.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back. We've really been talking about the crazy year we've been having here with 2020 and, well, just all the uncertainties that have come about as a result of it. And mostly, obviously the economic uncertainties. What's things going to look like going forward? What's the economy going to look like? The markets, taxes, all those kinds of things. And so my point, and like I said, this is not a new point. I've been making this for over 22 years. Having some monies in a bucket that's consistent, secure, has some guarantees, eliminate tax liability on it, grow tax-free income, it just makes sense. It just makes basic logical sense. Now, modern portfolio theory talks about all the time. You've heard this before, 60-40 is a good rule of thumb, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. That theory has been around since the 1950s, has been proven to work for decades, over and over and over again. But if you read into it a little further, most people talk about equities and bonds, but there's nothing in it that talks about it has to be bonds for that safer bucket. It really just needs to be a tool, a financial tool that has consistency, has some guarantees. Having some tax benefits is nice. Reducing taxes, that's also a nice benefit. The key is secure, steady, eddy, consistent. That's really what it needs to be. And one of the biggest surprises I get when I talk to people, either listening to the show or in person, is, and I've referred to this chart over and over and over again, when I show them the actual dividend returns of many of these insurance companies that we work with. Remember, the personal bank concept is not to buy insurance for death benefit purpose. There is one, but we're minimizing that. We're maximizing the cash, and growing cash and dividends is the key. So many people are surprised when I show them the charts of what these companies have been paying out every year for the last 25 years. There are companies that have been paying over 6% dividends for over 25 years and still continue to do so today. See, that's the part that, most of the time, like I said, just shocked. It's funny this is where I find the insurance industry frustrating. They just don't do a very good job of marketing themselves. They don't talk about themselves very much. Really, they just quietly go about doing their business, and they do it well. Many of the companies have been doing this literally for over a century. Companies have been paying dividends, never missed since before the Civil War. Okay? That's one heck of a long, solid, consistent track record. A-plus rated, never missed dividends ever, even through the Great Depression. Tons of cash reserves, have plenty of monies available to continue to pay out strong dividends. And like I said, and have been paying 6% or more the last 25 years. Gosh, folks, to put things in perspective, when interest rates were a little bit more normal prior to 08, 09, we've been going through a 12-year period here of extremely low, historical low, like generational low interest rate environments, and they're still paying 6%. That's phenomenal. Before that, just about every company was paying 7 or 8%. Dividends consistently. Folks, that's strong. Oh, don't forget, we set it up correctly, tax-free. So depending on your bracket, your income, when you figure state and federal, depending on which state you're in, I was talking to a gentleman in California 2 days ago. A third of their money's going to taxes. More than that, actually. It's like 45% state and federal tax for them. Okay. The thing is, depending on your bracket, a 6% return dividend is probably equivalent to easily 7, probably 8 for many people or more. For this gentleman, it was more than that. 7, 8% after tax return, or before tax return, most people would be pretty happy with, I think. Especially when you talk about with consistency and guarantees. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So, like I said, the biggest surprise I get when I speak with folks and I show them, and it's not just one company; it's a number of them have been doing this, and they've been very quietly just plugging along, doing their thing, and paying their people that invest with them. Okay, and just doing a good job, and not making a big fuss about it. And I think, a lot of people ask me why don't they talk about it more? Why don't they advertise it more? Because I think certainly if they were Wall Street, you'd hear about it everywhere, wouldn't you? I mean, people that are looking for dividend paying stocks and bonds and things like that. Do you think if there was a dividend paying stock or bonds out there that had that kind of track record for that long, okay, wouldn't they'd be all over the place, wouldn't they? Everybody know about it. Okay. The thing is, I think it's a lot of it because a lot of the insurance companies are based in the Midwest primarily. And it's just that Midwestern philosophy, just a different mindset. It's very conservative, consistent, don't make a big fuss over things, that kind of thing, which frankly is kind of dull, kind of boring. And that's actually what we're looking for. Because in that bucket of money, right? We're not talking about the game, get out there and go crazy and grow your money and take on the risk and shoot for the stars. That's for the equity portion, right? In your modern portfolio theory. That's for your 60% or 50% or 70%, whatever percentage makes sense for you. Rock and roll, have fun, go for it. I hope that, make the most out of it. But the conservative portion, the steady, consistent one, that's not what you're looking for. In fact, that requires a whole different mindset. Frankly, you probably should have a whole different advisor. Nothing against the advisor that's helping you grow your money, but it's a different mindset. It's a different process. It's a different product, different licensing, different tools, different companies even that do the steady, Eddie, consistent, and do it well for a long, long time. I mean, I do work with a number of clients where they do have, tend to be more wealthier clients where they'll have more than one advisor, and I'm their conservative, steady, Eddie, consistent one because that's what I do well. One of the things I tell people all the time is sometimes it's more important, and I've had shows previously, I've shared this thought. And by the way, if you want to listen to any of the previous shows, I've been failing to mention this, but I really need to do this more, is go to yourpersonalbank.com and you listen to any of the previous recorded shows, and the topics are on there. Check it out, and I think you'll find a lot of great information. I've been getting tremendous feedback on it. But my point is, a lot of some of my clients, some of the more wealthier ones, they don't have one advisor. Now, that's not what the financial industry, the advisors want. I mean, anybody, myself included, advisor would prefer to be, your handle everything, right? It's just, it's easier. You get more control of the situation. When there's somebody else involved, there's less control, right? That's just natural human nature. But frankly, for a lot of folks, particularly if your portfolio is significant enough, it just makes logical sense. Particularly if if you've got money in a couple different buckets and you want some of it to grow and you want to maximize growth potential on one side, and the other side of it, you want steady, consistent, steady Eddie and some tax benefits. It's hard for one individual person mentally to make the jump from one to the other and handle both well. I'm not saying there aren't any advisors that can't do that out there, but it's just a basic human nature thing. You're kind of either growth focused. I've heard people talk about it. You got to have a little bit of gambler in you, a little bit of that Vegas, Atlantic City, Wall Street kind of attitude. You do to be really, really successful in that game, because that's what it is in that process. But to be in the steady Eddie game takes a different personality type. And you want that, actually. You want that person who's got the steady, consistent, more risk adverse, that Midwestern, not get too high, not get too low, just be steady and consistent, personality, focus, products, companies, all that. Folks, there really is a difference. And if you haven't explored that, I recommend contacting me at yourpersonalbank.com. I'll show you what I mean, and I'll show you the difference. Stay tuned in the next segment, and we'll wrap this up with some more great information that'll help you out and may enhance your financial future.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back. We're rounding third and wrapping this up today. I'll tell you what, we've been talking a lot about our crazy year here, 2020, with all the uncertainties that have evolved. And what's next? And that's just impossible to know. And I guess it's with that impossibility of knowing what's next, having, as I pointed out for 22 years now, having a bucket of your money in a safer, secure, consistent, steady Eddie type of bucket just makes a lot of sense. It's just good times or bad times. It just makes sense to have that, because you just never know when you need access to that monies, or, when that's the part that's going to shine because things are going crazy on the other side, right? It just makes logical sense. And so it doesn't have to be bonds. In fact, with the interest rate environment being so low for the last decade plus, the Federal Reserve has been announcing they're going to keep this interest rate environment down for the next several years. Bonds or interest rate returns are suffering and are going to continue to do so. It's driving them down. The personal bank with the companies paying 6% dividends the last 25 years plus, never missing dividends for since before the Great Depression. Before Civil War, literally, never missed through the Great Depression either. By the way, that just makes sense. And it's worth looking at. And it's worth looking at having your safer bucket of money, having some funds there. And that's where we shine. I've Yes, 2 days ago, I was talking to a gentleman who had been looking at this, and everybody talked to him about annuities. He's nearing retirement. He's wanting a consistent, steady income source. And so an annuity can make some sense. The point I made to him, though, was with a lot of annuities right now these days, with the low interest rate environment, they're struggling to get a return, okay? Because just like bonds are, all right? Some of them are doing better, but the reality is they're struggling. The personal bank policies are still paying more because they're more based on lifetime investment horizons. In other words, when you set one of these up and you give money to the insurance company, what are they doing with it? They're reinvesting. And how long are they going to have that money to invest? Because remember, we're focusing on growing cash, right? Maximizing cash growth. Well, for the rest of your life. So, and they know you went through underwriting to determine a pretty darn accurate measure of how long you're going to live. So the over 98% accuracy rate, by the way, they know how long you're going to live once you go through underwriting. And then they know they've got 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it may be. They're going to have access and use of these dollars to be able to invest and make money on them, and then pay you the dividends, which, like I said, 6% plus last 25 years and going, and be able to pay out whatever death benefit there is at the end of your heirs. Remember, we're minimizing the death benefit. We're pushing it down on purpose. This is the opposite of what you understand about life insurance, which is probably the other point I should make. The biggest surprise I get from people is, wow, I know when I show them the charts and the history of all the different companies and what they've paid actual dividends out for since I think 1994, the past 25 years, they're shocked. They're like, I had no idea these companies were paying that well, and some of them still paying 6% today, and have for the last 25 years history. The other thing is, and one of the things I have to share with people all the time is, everything you understand about insurance, throw out the window. Because what we're doing is the opposite. Most people, again, focus on insurance. When you say the term insurance, they're looking at death benefit protection. What's the least amount of money I have to contribute to get the most death benefit? And that's the purpose of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your goal for that money, that's a death protection. That's a protection tool. That's not an asset class. That's not an investment tool. It's a protection tool. We're doing the opposite. We're building cash. We're growing cash. We're giving you the access to cash. And like I said, it's 6% dividends and going the last 25 years plus. His long-term history of high dividends continue to pay you. So if you're looking for a dividend-paying stock or bond or some other source of income to supplement income, and you wanted that steady Eddie consistent bucket, this is something you need to consider. Your Personal Bank. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. I'll be happy to share with you some more about how this can work for you and create that income source with some guarantees. And oh, by the way, don't forget, we set it up correctly, we can create tax-free income for you. You know, what are taxes going to be like in the future? No one knows. That's impossible to predict. And so many people with large IRAs and 401ks have tremendous unknown or uncertainty in terms of what their tax liability in the future is going to be. I would be concerned. I mean, the government owes money, right? And the government keeps increasing the amount they owe, right? One of the ways to pay down on that debt is to increase taxes. So if you have a big, in our industry, we call it a ticking tax time bomb, we need to look at setting up some tax-free assets and income to offset that potential ticking tax time bomb you have. Because if you have two buckets, if you have a tax-free bucket and a taxable bucket, and you're pulling income from it, can you choose how much you pull from each bucket? Can you then determine what tax bracket you fall into that year? With a high degree of flexibility, the answer is yes. But if you're all tied up into one where everything's basically taxable, if you access it, you're kind of stuck with whatever rules they throw out at you. I don't know about you, but I never like not having options. That was a double negative, I know. What I prefer is to have options, and that's one of the goals we always are trying to accomplish for our clients is, don't you want to have more options down the road? Don't you want to have a situation where you have a bucket of money over here doing its thing, you got another bucket over here doing its thing, And those two things are different. One's trying to, most people, they're trying to accumulate growth, maximize growth as much as possible, which is great. But this other bucket's designed to grow consistently, steady, Eddie. No matter what, it's just every year goes up. And by the way, we can structure it so it's tax-free. So then in the future, if the markets aren't cooperating like things are going bad, or the tax situation has changed and taxes have gone up on you, don't you want to have the option? See, if you contact me when all that happens, oh my gosh, I just found out my tax bill just jumped. Not a lot I'm going to be able to do for you at that point. We can look at the future years, but the reality is planning, this is where an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Tax planning, reallocating assets so that you can have some options in the future in terms of taxes, in terms of liability, in terms of risk, has to be done now. The best time to plant a tree, 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree, today. So if you haven't done this before, then do it now. And the best way to do that is contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Let me share with you how we can do some real future tax planning and show you how you can give yourself some options and reduce your future tax liability, just like the book The Power of Zero talks about by David Barton. His point is simple. If tax rates double, 2 times 0 is still 0, isn't it? You don't care. But the point is, for most people, is you'll have a second option. You'll have 2 buckets. And by the way, 6% dividends, tax-free, if you just leave it there and let it grow, that ain't bad these days, is it? And the last part of it that I haven't even talked about today at all, which you're just going to stay tuned to the next show, is the positive arbitrage with the bank line of credit. Because remember, we're combining a banking tool with an insurance tool to create the personal bank concept, which takes it to another level. This allows you to access money from your account through your bank line and create positive arbitrage. How would you like to make 2 or 3% on money you spent? That's what the Your Personal Bank concept can do. That's what this tool can do. Contact us at yourpersonalbank.com for more information. And as always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank Show.
Listen Tuesday at noon and Thursdays at 1 for more information on Your Personal Bank. Contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may charge. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.